So my first semester of college started off pretty rocky, to say the least. I didn't exercise very much. I played video games pretty much every day. I ate a lot of mac and cheese. And probably worst of all is my sleep pattern was really bad. I was going to bed at like 2 a.m. a lot of the time. And that's just like throughout the week even, not just like on a Friday or something like that. All those things about like the freshman 15 and like all that jazz. I'm a pretty skinny guy with a high metabolism, that's never gonna happen to me. It can still happen to anyone, okay? I wasn't paying attention and my health kind of slowly started to decline, and that had a pretty negative effect on like just my daily living and things like that. I wasn't going out and like partying every weekend or day for that matter. And I wasn't getting wasted or any of that jazz. Like all the typical college stuff that, you could associate with having negative effects on your health. I wasn't doing it. But that said, like I was still being really passive with my health. Yeah, if you smoke a pack a day, you're probably gonna cut your life a little bit short. But ultimately, passivity is kind of what can really kill you. Just not paying attention to your health. It's sort of like that frog in the boiling pot analogy, where if you put a frog like just in a pot of boiling water, he's gonna hop out right away. But if you were to put a frog in just a pot of cold water, and you put that like on the stovetop or whatever, and then you like slowly turn the burner on over time, then he's not gonna notice until it's too late that, oh, this water's really, really hot and it's gonna kill me. I wanted to hop out of the pot like before it was too late. So that comes down to like some pretty basic things on like, how do you live a healthier lifestyle? A lot of people will try, especially like with New Year's resolutions, to be like really aggressive at like taking charge of their health. I'm gonna go to the gym every day. I'm never gonna eat Doritos again. I'm gonna, only watch YouTube for an hour a day or something like that. And basically they haven't taken the time to like prep overtime to actually make those realistic goals. They just kind of want to, jump right in, and they just want to take the time to jump right in. And so when failure comes, inevitably, like they get really disappointed and frustrated and they give up. The other danger that can happen is, of course, you set the bar too low and then you reach your goal super easy, but you actually haven't changed much of your lifestyle. You're not making a big improvement. You're just kind of, feeling good about yourself while you still are living super unhealthy. And so for me, I wanted to kind of find a balance in between those, where it was something I felt I could actually achieve, but I would have to like work at or sacrifice something to achieve it. And that's why I came up with doing monthly challenges. I've been doing this since October of 2019. Every month I do something different, where either I cut something out of my life or I add something into my life. So this video I'm going to be talking about just 2019, everything that happened in 2019 with this new challenge thing that I decided to do. Basically, a month or like 30 days, it's not enough to form a habit. I did a little bit of research, and most people I think would say it takes roughly 2 months of doing something like every day to form a good habit. But a month is still enough to see like the effects of change and to like encourage you to continue to form like good habits. Even if it's not enough to form the habit itself, it can kind of show you the results of what'll happen if you do form a habit based off of it. Yeah, let's dive right in and I'll kind of tell you how stuff has been going. So the first challenge I did was I didn't play Overwatch for a month. Now, for those of you who do not know, Overwatch is a team-based, competitive, multiplayer, first-person shooter video game. Basically, it's like, to put it in layman's terms, The game is what happens when you have two families who are arguing over who gets the last Oreo, and then they fight to the death over it. That is Overwatch, pretty much. So in Overwatch, there are like 3 different roles that you can play. There's tank, damage, support, and each of these roles has a slightly different purpose of, like, they have like a different job for what they're supposed to do on the team. So, you know, whether it's dealing out damage or healing or like absorbing damage, kind of being like a meat shield essentially. And then within those 3 main roles, there's like 30 some characters total, and each of these characters has unique abilities and like a different type of play style, and each character feels like super fun to play. So in order to succeed as a team though, you need to combine like each character's unique abilities with other players' unique abilities, and like finding good combos that like work well together is kind of like at the heart of a lot of the game. And then beyond that, just understanding how the game works, and how it's really dynamic and constantly changing. Like, you have to counter the enemy's strategy, but then they'll counter your strategy, and so you have to counter their counter. It gets really complicated really fast, but because the game is like constantly moving, it's really engaging, and for me, it's super fun. Like, there's no other video game I've ever played that perfectly balances like player intelligence with player skill. Understanding how the game works and playing it well, playing your role well and your character well, the more you do that, the better off your team is, and it's just really fun. It's a super, super fun game. So why did I stop playing it for a month? You know, everything isn't quite as nice as it originally seems. Have you ever tried to work with someone like you've never met before? How about working together with them when you can't see their face and you don't know their real name? Yeah, people are weird behind a TV monitor. You know, when they can hide behind something, they can often take on like a different persona. They hide behind their monitors and they spit venom from their lips. You know, rather than being encouraging or listening to advice or like making the right call outs and stuff like that, they start yelling at each other. You know, they accuse their teammates of not performing well. Basically, they blame anyone other than themselves for everything that is going wrong. And to boot, they use very colorful language in order to get their message across. Basically, it's really toxic, and quite frankly, it's not worth the fun or the relationships that you could build. And so to clarify, I don't think Overwatch is an inherently like immoral game. But in my scenario, it wasn't healthy. I don't have any other friends who play it. I've never been one who really likes to build relationships online, like with people I've never met before. And I played it a lot. If I had nothing going on, you know, rather than getting ahead on homework, I would usually sit down and play Overwatch. If it was the weekend, you know, I might play for 3 or 4 hours in a row. It wasn't good. When it comes down to it, I played it for how fun and rewarding the gameplay is, and just kind of ignored all the negative language that I was being exposed to. And also to clarify, I don't want you to, you know, go thinking that Overwatch is like always this toxic game. I got into a random match, and in this match, you know, there were still a few expletives, and, you know, some dude tried to make a joke that wasn't entirely appropriate. But overall, it was much, much less than what is normal. Running into people who are genuinely like fun, they're not here to put you down, they're here to like build you up, and to have that positive attitude is really fun. in the game. And I think I'll show you a clip here where this guy like takes out a whole bunch of them, and I'm also playing, and I had my 6th place set up, and then he like stole it from me, and we were just laughing so hard. It was a really good time.
Play of the game.
I love the pace in which you cleared the railing, killed the thing, and then I knew.
Oh yeah, like they should have been able to turn around and
By then, yeah.
That aside, what if I didn't play it? You know, what if I didn't expose myself to all this negativity? I didn't. I took a break. I didn't even boot it up on my PS4. The challenge was very simple, is don't play Overwatch for a month. Now that is a pretty lenient challenge. So there's a streamer that I like to watch, and he played a lot of Overwatch, and so I kept watching him play. But that was already something I was doing beforehand, so it wasn't really like start watching a streamer to accompany the fact that I had stopped playing Overwatch. I just kind of kept doing what I'd already been doing in that regard. I still had a lot more time than what I was used to. If you add up a week worth of playing a few hours a day, I probably had, 8 to 12 extra hours of free time now for my week. So what did I do with all that amazing free time? I played more video games. I know, all you people at home who hate video games think that's the stupidest thing you've ever heard, and you're not entirely wrong. But I can't lie. Like, that's what I did. I just played other games instead of Overwatch. So I didn't suddenly start reading 2 extra hours every day just because I'd stopped playing this other game. So, at the very least, what other games did I play? At this time, one of my friends, he gave me The Last of Us remastered for the PS4, which is an incredible story-driven game. And it reminded me that, there are other reasons to play video games besides just killing time and waiting to do your homework. Developers make games for a lot of different reasons. One of them is definitely just to consume time, to be entertainment. But, there's a lot of really creative projects out there, like art-driven type things that are super amazing. One of my favorite things about video games is the storytelling. I love storytelling. I want to do that for a career in some fashion. I want to learn how to communicate well with others and to teach them to communicate better. Storytelling is one of the best ways of communicating, ideas about life and love and truth and all that jazz. Super cool. I love it so much. It got me thinking a little bit about my life, and to me that's one of the greatest signs of a good story, is it makes you think deeper. You don't just consume it. It makes you think, and it changes the way you live. And so The Last of Us, one of the main things that I've been thought about, and it pops back up in my head, is the question of how far will I go to protect those I love? That's kind of what the very core of that game is about. Now, if you just saw the gameplay, you'd probably see a lot of, just shooting zombies. It's a little bit of post-apocalyptic type stuff going on in that game. But in reality, it's a super heartbreaking yet heartwarming story of a father-daughter relationship. I love it so much. So while you could argue that, my not playing Overwatch for a month was kind of like a failure, which it was in a lot of ways, I think it was still a good reminder. There are other reasons to play video games than just playing the same game day after day and not really ever accomplishing anything. Another thing I learned was that cutting something out of your life isn't enough. You actually have to replace it with something. Think ahead of what am I going to do instead of this, rather than I'm not going to do this. Because the chances are you're just going to fill it with something that's just as unhealthy, kind of. And my other advice to you is, if you are someone who likes to play games a lot, then just take a break. Forget the grind of one more level. That skin you really want, it really doesn't change a lot in the grand scheme of life. First off, go see what other games are out there. Go stand in awe at some of the amazing things that people have created that are meant to like impact you rather than just entertain you. And beyond that, there's some amazing things in video games, but there's some pretty awesome things in the real world too. Don't let everything slip by in real life because you've been spending so much time in virtual reality. So let's be honest, if you're tech savvy enough to find this video on YouTube, you already know what Twitter is. But yes, Twitter was my November monthly challenge. I did not use Twitter for the month of November. For those of you who do not know though, Twitter is one of the social media platforms. They come a dime a dozen, there's so many of them. Twitter is pretty popular, mostly among like politics and like celebrities and things like that. So why did I like not use Twitter though? Most people think that social media, especially in excess, is just really unhealthy. It's addictive and people waste hours on it. It's just bad. It can spread a lot of like terrible language to other people. The only problem is that people also have a like different definition of what qualifies as excessive. So for me, I was spending like probably 15 to 20 minutes of each day on Twitter. And so I personally would not qualify that as excessive. That was time that I devoted to seeing what a couple of friends were up to, or laughing at like some funny memes, or just staying up to date with current events. The only problem is that it gets tiring like really quickly, because Twitter, more than a lot of other social media platforms, is just like, it's all a game. You think Overwatch is bad as far as toxic natures? Yeah, no, Twitter is terrible. People will name call, there's bias, it's a really hostile environment. The other annoying thing for me was that the newsfeed was like always the same. It's either, there was some article about a celebrity who committed some atrocity, and then, the latest tech development, there's a new movie coming out, some minority group probably got violated, and the Democrats have found yet another reason to hate President Trump. It was just all the same, and it got really frustrating. And now, to be fair, like, it's good in the sense of you get a wide variety of news, but it was like always the same headlines, and so it drove me nuts. The other problem is that like the information wasn't actually helpful. Like nothing actually worthwhile. Now, some of it was interesting to me, but we're talking like 10% of the time the news was interesting to me. That's 90% of my time being wasted. Now, if I'm only on Twitter for like 10 minutes, that's like 1 minute of useful time and 9 minutes. I can't do this right. And 9 minutes of wasted time. Like, that's not a lot of time I've lost in my day. But percentage-wise, that's crazy. 90% of my time being wasted. There's no point in doing it. Now, what about like the politics side of things? If you were to examine Twitter and look at a lot of the politics, it'd be pretty obvious to see that there's like a liberal or a Democratic bias. Why that is, you could maybe look at a lot of different reasons, but I think it's kind of a fact if you looked at it. There was one headline that I remember that just drove me nuts. I think it was some statistic last fall about, it was the number of Americans who support impeaching Trump. And I think the statistic was like, I need to get it right. The statistic was 50 to 45% of Americans support impeaching the president. Now you look at that, I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But then I got to thinking about it, I'm like, that's not how you report things. Like, okay, what did we learn in math class? Like, whenever you have a range of things, and in just common daily life, you always report things low to high, right? We are expecting anywhere from 25 to 30 students to attend this class, or the recipe calls for 3 to 4 tomatoes, or something like that. The only time you report something high to low is if you're trying to make a point. And that annoys me because that's not being unbiased. You're trying to elevate the statistic by showing the high statistic before the low statistic. Maybe that's a really nitpicky qualm, and maybe I'm missing something. I'm not reading into it right. All I know is it really annoyed me. If a news article simply wants to report the facts, they'd report it low to high. That's what I think, so that's why it annoyed me. And beyond that, this is most news in general. Why is it always about everything that's going wrong in the world? I don't want to know what Congress is not doing. Like, I don't want to know everything wrong with Congress. I want to know what they are doing. So yeah, after getting frustrated with all this nonsense, I was just like, we're done. I'm not going to do it for a month. So again, this challenge is pretty simple. Just don't open Twitter for a month. Funny story, I technically failed it instantly. It was the last day of October, and I wasn't paying much attention. I was just on Twitter, and then I realized that it had crossed over into midnight, or from midnight into the next day. It was now November 1st, and I was on Twitter. So yeah, I failed. Whoops. That was pretty embarrassing. Technical failure aside, the rest of the month was super easy. It was probably so easy that it got me thinking, what have I been doing this whole time, sort of? So I moved Twitter to like a separate slide on my phone, where basically I'd have to slide over to a specific slide that I wouldn't normally use. This is sort of that like out of sight, out of mind type thing. So what actually changed for me after I did this, and really not much. Most of my time on Twitter, probably like 70% of my time on Twitter, was just in downtime, like if I was in the restroom or waiting for class to start or something like that. And so I had roughly 10 to 20 minutes of extra time each day, and some of that downtime went to just watching videos on YouTube, but a lot of it just kind of went into the day, I guess. 15 minutes, like that's not really a lot of time to affect a lot of things. I'm just speaking generally. Depending on what kind of mindset you've got, you can probably do a ton of awesome things in 15 minutes. But in general, 15 minutes is usually not regarded as a lot of time. And so I wasn't necessarily gaining a lot of free time to do other things. It was more of, I didn't have this distraction. That was kind of the biggest thing, was I didn't have a distraction to go to when I could be thinking about more productive things, kind of. So like if my mind was on a particular issue and I got on Twitter, it would suddenly just like shift away from that issue. But by not being on Twitter, I was able to like continue thinking about the issue and staying focused. And, I did wonder kind of throughout the month whether there was anything I was missing out on. Like I was thinking back in the past of like, I remember seeing the new Matrix movie announced, or like the newest set of Marvel movies or TV shows. Like those were announced on Twitter, and I remember seeing those first there. And I wondered, if there was a big news event, how many days behind I would be by not being on Twitter before it would finally, catch up to me of, hey, this is what's going on in the world right now. The only thing is that most of the stuff I was actually interested in could be found on YouTube, also super easy. And so there really wasn't much that I missed out on. I was pretty interested in the Democratic race. Still am a little bit, but especially in November, just because there was a lot more people involved. I wanted to hear about Yang and Gabbard. I probably butchered their names. Just kind of some of the Democrats that were kind of outside the margins of, what is normal. So I wanted to see what they were up to and, catch up with the Democratic debates and things like that. But again, that was just stuff I could find on YouTube. So the only thing that I really missed was the Babylon Bee, my go-to Christian satire news website. Oh, it's glorious. But for real, some of those headlines are just so funny, and satire is honestly one of the best ways to like get at what's actually going on with like the news and things like that. They're really good at pointing out where things are like biased or like hypocrisy. That's like kind of the point of satire. I did miss those, and I also kind of missed I didn't really miss them, but I felt a little bit irresponsible not knowing like whenever Trump tweeted out something, just because that's one of his main methods of keeping in touch with like the people. And so in my mind, I'm like, if the president has something to say, I should listen, even if it's on Twitter. And so I did feel bad about, kind of missing out on what him and his staff were wanting to present to the people. But if I'm totally honest, I didn't like actually miss it, because I probably didn't even really read most of what he had to say. A lot of times it's just something about the economy being great, which is great. But when I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see 3 posts about the economy being great, when I've already heard him say that before, probably not going to read it in super great detail. In the end, I pretty much just learned that Twitter doesn't really have much to offer. Yeah, I mean, I'd miss out on a couple things that my friends posted, but most of my friends aren't even on Twitter, so it's not really a big deal there. Maybe I'm not, the first person to hear about Star Wars 15 coming out, but like, let's be real, Disney really wants my money. They're gonna find a way to advertise to me outside of Twitter. I'm gonna find out eventually. There's just so many other ways of staying informed where Twitter is not necessary, in my opinion. Back in November, I had seriously considered deleting it. I didn't, because it's just convenient in some ways. I actually now have since deleted it. I think there's just one day where I was like, forget it, I'll just delete it. And honestly, I haven't regretted it, and I haven't regretted it mostly because I haven't noticed it. So my challenge to you would be take a break from social media. Twitter for me wasn't a major source of social media, so I wasn't really sacrificing much, but I have also done at the past, like taking like a week off of Snapchat or something like that. It really does help a lot. It kind of helps you stay focused. So that's the biggest thing is, when you're in a class, don't pull up Twitter. Go talk to your classmates. They're interesting people. See what you can learn. So the last challenge I did in 2019 had to do with my sleep patterns. This was the first challenge I did that was actually kind of difficult because it changed a lot of my lifestyle in a good way. But basically, first semester, you might have called me like a night owl. That's kind of the common expression. Basically, I went to bed late and I got up late. If we're talking averages, average bedtime probably was like 2 a.m. Average wake up time, maybe like 9:30. So if you look at that, I mean, by the time I actually fall asleep and get up, you're looking at maybe like 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep a day, which is close, if not in like the actual daily recommended sleep. But that's just like looking at the averages. That doesn't account for all the times I stayed up till 3 when I had class the next morning at 10. Like, it's not the smartest decision. There were definitely a lot of problems with the lack of sleep. One of the most obvious ones was that I didn't eat breakfast as often because I had to get up quickly out of bed to make it to class on time, which is a really big issue for me because I love breakfast and it gives me a lot of energy. But I would often have to skip it because I just didn't have time for it. The other thing with like not having enough sleep made it just hard to function at full capacity the next day. I was just really tired throughout the day, and that led to things like, I'm not gonna do my assignment because I'm tired, so I'm gonna go play games. But then I have to stay up late because I didn't finish my homework earlier, and it just kind of led to this cycle of being tired and then too tired to do work on things, but then I have to work on them anyway. It's just a mess. It wasn't good. I'm not smart enough to know if there is like something scientifically wrong or like unhealthy versus healthy with the time you go to bed. But in my mind, there's nothing wrong with going to bed late and getting up late if you're still being like productive and have energy throughout the day. But that wasn't the case for me. I wasn't getting enough sleep and I wasn't being productive that night. Most of my nights that I was up late, again, was either because I was playing games with friends, playing video games, or I was catching up on homework that I neglected earlier in the day. So it wasn't like I was getting up late and writing the next great American novel or finding a cure for cancer or anything like that. It was just messing around and being tired mostly. So it needed to stop. I needed to go to bed at a decent time, not stay up excessively late, and really just wake up early enough the next day where by the time stuff got rolling, like I was energized and I was feeling productive. So the exact challenge was I had to be in bed before midnight for a month. Now, some people that might still be like a late bedtime, but compared to what I had, it was, 2 hours earlier. That was a fairly significant drop. This challenge had a lot more strict parameters. The actual challenge was I needed to be in my bed before 12 o'clock. So that was just kind of like the gist of the challenge, but there was a lot of exceptions going on and some other things that I also wanted to watch out for because they kind of went against the spirit of the challenge. So like for me, if I had been snapping someone on Snapchat and it got past midnight, I couldn't respond. Like all conversations needed to end before that, regardless of whether or not I was in bed. Because the goal was to try and actually fall asleep earlier rather than just be like in position to fall asleep. Same goes for like watching YouTube videos. That goes against the purpose if I'm watching videos for an hour when I'm trying to sleep. Also, I can't hop into bed and then hop back out of bed to go finish working on something like that. Again, it goes against the spirit of the challenge. Now, there were some legitimate exceptions. The main exception I had was work. The job I was working in December, basically there were some times where I would go past midnight. Not like super late, but still there's just no way I could be done with work before midnight. So that was an exception that I made. I also made the exception where if it was something that really mattered, like with my friends or my family, I'm obviously not going to choose doing a self-imposed challenge over helping someone in need or having a conversation that needs to happen, kind of. So it was kind of like, if I could, I would do that early in the day, but a lot of times you don't have control over those kinds of circumstances, so there's nothing you can do about it. I also gave myself a couple days off where I knew for sure I was gonna go past midnight. So Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, both of those I didn't worry about going over. Same goes for New Year's Eve, although like technically when New Year's Eve hits midnight, it's the next month, so like the challenge is over. So that one was a little bit wonky, so I didn't worry about it. So I'm gonna go through this list because I wrote down every day I was either not in bed before midnight or I was in bed working on something. So they are the 2nd, the 5th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 16th, 19th, 22nd, 24th, 25th, 29th, 30th. So that's what I have to work with. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. So let's go through these real quick and see how many times I actually broke the spirit of the challenge, right? So the 2nd, I was up working late. So we can cross that one off. That one doesn't count. The 5th, this one is really dumb. I had to jump into bed at midnight because I'd been pushing it really close because it was my friend's birthday. And so I got into bed at midnight and then I had to hop back out of bed to like turn a light off or something dumb. And we can cross that one off. It was fine. The 10th, I had to work late that day, but I also stayed up late with friends because I was already past the challenge. So we'll maybe leave that one in there. The 11th, I had to work late and then I stayed up watching a stream. Yeah, that one doesn't count. That one, even though I was already past it, it's violating the spirit of the challenge. So that's one for sure. That was no bueno. The 12th, I was a minute late. 16th, I was in bed, but then I worked on stuff for a few minutes. 19th was kind of the same deal. 22nd, apparently I was watching stuff for about 5 minutes. No, that doesn't count. 24th, 25th, we made exceptions for. 29th was watching a video. Also, that one does not count. And the 30th does not count either. So I don't know. I need to go back through those, but I think that was probably like 3 3 or 4 days where it was actually like going against the spirit of the challenge. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't call it a failure, but I wouldn't say I blew it out of the park either. Because in the end, the goal was just to see how that would affect my lifestyle, and it really did. It helped a lot because I knew I had to be in bed before midnight, and for once, like I'm someone who always tends to procrastinate, to put things off to the last minute. I still do it, but this forced me to actually get stuff done early in the day because I knew, hey, I have a challenge. I need to be in bed before midnight. I'm going to take care of my homework now, so I know for sure I can be in bed before 12. So that one really helped actually a lot. That's out of all the challenges I did in 2019, that one was the most beneficial, and really helped me see just how much better it is to go to bed at a decent time and to get stuff done earlier in the day. Since then, I still stay up late every now and then. There's been recently, like the past few weeks, coming back after first semester, where I've gotten into a few of the same traps, usually not staying up late playing games, but more of the not getting stuff done earlier in the day, so now I have to do it late at night. So I run into problems with procrastination, and that's just time management that I have to figure out how to deal with. But out of all the challenges I did, like this one would be the most helpful, I feel like, for a lot of people. Whatever your normal bedtime is, like if you feel like it's too late at night, just drop it down a little bit and you'll get more done throughout the day. That's how it worked for me. Hopefully that's how it'll work for you if you ever do it. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of my 2019 challenges. I'm still doing them. January I did where I read a proverb a month, or I read a proverb a day for a month. That's a really easy thing for people to do. That one was super easy. And then February I did some stuff working out. You'll find out more about that one. February is probably the second best of the challenges I've done. This December one was probably the best, and then after that, February. But yeah, try these out. If they're helpful, let me know. If you made a 2020 resolution, how's it going? Like, are you still sticking to it? And if not, maybe just try it for a month. It's not as big of a commitment as you might think it is. It's really not like that hard. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please check out my other videos if you're interested, and have a wonderful day.